Atlanta, as you also know, chairs the right group, and I chair the loose group. This is a joint meeting of both of us, two different political action committees that believe that it's very important that strong, conservative people who understand how this country was built, understand the free market system, and for those who choose to run for office, for us to say not only thank you, but let us hear from you. If we feel inclined to do so, we'd like to help you, because our whole mission is to provide financial assistance in races such as the congressional races that you're in, to make sure that we do our part to help elect the right people in government. Let me tell you, take us a couple of brief minutes to sort of explain the format, what we do here. I will tell you in a moment who the candidates will be that'll be speaking. There are 4 of them. You probably have all had a chance to speak to them. After I read through their names in a few minutes, there are 4 of them. I suspect that they will be able to keep count of the order in which they will be able to speak, because I'm going to set that. If anybody's confused, I can add comment then, but I deliberately don't get up here and try to tell you who I know and what I know about them. We ask the candidates to take a couple of moments at the beginning, introduce themselves, why they're running, why they feel that they are well prepared to be in the United States Congress for the particular district that they're running in. Now, we don't really care how long you take to say that, as long as it does not exceed a total of 13 minutes, including questions and answers. We don't mind at all if you speak less than that, as long as you are satisfied you have said what you think we need to hear in order to understand who you are. I have an iPad. I won't be sitting right over here. I have it set. It's the size of an iPad. It has one of these gizmos that I have just about figured out how to operate. It's a timer. The screen will come back up as a big circle. It will have 10 minutes on it. And as the 10 minutes evaporate, a red circle begins at the top and comes all the way around until it completes the circle. When it completes, you should not any longer be talking. You should be answering questions by then. If you haven't, I will very kindly let you know that you have 3 minutes left. But do it at your own pace. If you want to just primarily be answering questions, you can talk as long as you want to and stop before I get called time. Now, we do try to get out of here within less than an hour, because we will break and we will go into 2 different groups, the loose group and the right group, to conduct a business session to determine what business or what action we should be taking. And we will then excuse everyone else, because the loose group won't meet in here. I think there's one thing that's important for me to say, because it's sometimes if you're involved enough in politics, this type of thing happens from time to time. I think both candidates are aware of it, but some of you may not be, and I think it's important that I let you know that even though I chair the loose group, you should all know, particularly Bob Barr should know, that I have a sign in my front yard who tells everybody who I'm for, which is Ed Lindsay. It is the only campaign that I've gotten into this year, because he's a long-term friend. And I was in fact having conversations with Bob about his interest at the time in running for the United States Senate when we were about to meet. And he said he was going to run for the United States Senate. He had earlier been looking at running for this seat and had decided earlier to run for the Senate, then decided to run for this seat, and I had already committed to a different candidate. Bob, I assure you that in our deliberations, I will not take part in any discussion we have with respect to that particular seat. I think it's important for you to know that. And quite frankly, I appreciate the fact that you did not make such a conclusion that I have enough influence over anything that I could dictate what we do, that you're here seeking the support of the loose group as well as the right group. One other thing, very quickly, other than the timing, is the fact that we do want you to say whatever you need to about yourself. Take your time, enjoy yourself. We will. We appreciate your being here. We appreciate that you're taking the time to run for public office. And I will now tell you who's going to be speaking and in what order. We have congressional candidates seeking the 11th district seat that's been vacated by Phil Gingrich in order to run the United States Senate. Those 2 candidates are in alphabetical order, Bob Barr and Ed Lindsay. They will speak in alphabetical order, and when I sit down very shortly, Bob, it will be appropriate for you to come up at that point to start the process of making presentations. We also have candidates who are running for the Republican nomination for the 12th Congressional District. That is not an open seat. It is a seat held by a Democratic congressman who has been in that position for some time. It's a seat that we believe the Republican Party ought to be able to win, and we have two candidates here today who are seeking that Republican nomination. Those two candidates are Rick Allen and Eugene Yu, also in alphabetical order, just about as far apart as two people can get in alphabetical order. Between Allen and Yu, Rick, you will speak first, followed by Eugene. Bob, we're ready for you to start.
Thank you, Fred.
I am going to ask one other thing. As you can tell, starting with the person who's been speaking to this point, there are several differences in the right group and the loose group. One of those differences is that many of the members of the loose group are getting a bit long in the tooth and somewhat short in their ability to hear everything that is said. So it's a normal inclination for a candidate running for office to sort of vary away from the microphone and come up and speak to the crowd. I would specifically ask that you refrain from doing that because we have some people who will not have the slightest idea what you have said.
Maybe good.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you, Fred, and thank you all for being here. I've had the pleasure over the years since moving down to Atlanta from the Washington, D.C. area back in the late 1970s of knowing and working with many of you. You all may have not had the pleasure of knowing and working with my son Derek, who's here with me today as my campaign manager, Derek. And if anybody has any particularized questions about our campaign for the 11th District, events coming up and so forth, and I can't answer them or you can't find me at any time, certainly contact Derek. One event that I don't want to forget mentioning that we have coming up next Monday is Steve Forbes is going to be here in Atlanta doing a luncheon presentation as a fundraiser for me. Steve is a friend and a fraternity brother, and for those of you who were involved in my prior campaigns in the House, you know that he always made himself available for the campaign. So Derek has information on Mr. Forbes' visit on Monday. It'll be here in the Buckhead area at noon. The reason that I'm seeking the 11th district seat to return to the House of Representatives after a, shall we say, Fred, involuntary hiatus for a few years is because I know we can do better. During the time that I had the honor of representing the state of Georgia from the 7th Congressional District as part initially of the very large, somewhat boisterous class of 1994 that shifted not just the control of the House from the Democrat 40-year reign to the Republicans, but really shifted the entire political landscape in this country in a way that is with us even today. During that time, I had the honor of working with Newt and with many of our other leaders, Tom DeLay as the majority whip at the time, and Dick Armey from Texas and so forth. And that was the team that actually got things done. Even though we had at the time a liberal Democratic president by the name of one William Jefferson Clinton, who was not in the least bit predisposed to sign a balanced budget or reform welfare or cut taxes or engage in any form of regulatory reform, because we had a team in the House, even more so than in the Senate, because we had a team in the House that knew how to and did consistently use the levers of power in the House, primarily the appropriations process, the power of the purse strings, and we did it consistently. We defined the playing field on which Washington operated. We defined the rules of the game by which Bill Clinton was forced, by our consistent application of holding the purse strings, he was forced to sit down at the negotiating table. And even though to this day, he of course claims credit for the Balanced Budget Act of 1997, we dragged him kicking and screaming to the table to do that. One does recognize and give him credit for the fact that he finally did realize that it was the right thing to do and he was lose and the tide of history was against him, so he did sign it. But Those who argue that we cannot move our conservative agenda forward in Washington because there is a Democrat in the White House, or because we don't yet maintain control of the Senate, which I happen to think we will after this midterm election. For those who say it can't be done, and we simply have to send to Washington folks that will vote no on everything and not get something done that moves our conservative agenda forward, I say, don't listen to that. We can do better. We've done it before. And I ask for the opportunity to once again put those skills to work, not on behalf of the 7th district, because the district lines have changed, but the 11th district. Importantly, also, as a returning member of Congress, and this is not something special to me, it's not some special deal, but as a returning member of Congress, I would be afforded the standard protocol of a returning member of Congress to regain the seniority that I had acquired previously, so long as I would go back on, which I would seek to do, on the same committees that I served on when I served previously in the House. Primarily the Judiciary Committee, on which I served for 8 years, and the Financial Services Committee, which, as many of you all know, includes federal housing policies as well, on which I served for 8 years. I also served 6 years on the Primary Oversight Committee of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. I have also purposefully not engaged in what the Democrats like to do, and that is to drive wedges between the Republicans by trying to get Republicans to say, well, you know, I'm going to vote against these people when I get up there, and I'm going to be part of this faction when I get up there. Engaging in those sorts of games, which the Democrats love for us to do, because it pits one Republican against another, or one Republican group against another group, do nothing to move our cause forward. So I would encourage other candidates, and Ed has not done this, I'm not talking about Ed, but other candidates in various races who take money from groups, for example, whose avowed purpose is, in fact, to fight against the leadership of the Republican Party, not to do so. What I have tried to do, and I know what Ed has tried to do, is to keep this campaign focused where it ought to be, and that is the economic future of this country, which is in dire, dire straits as a result of what has happened in Washington, not just under this administration, but has accelerated tremendously under this administration. And I think the primary way we do that, yes, it includes fighting for a balanced budget amendment, which we tried before. We didn't have the votes for it, but it's important to keep trying that. Yes, it comes from moving forward an agenda, for example, to defund and replace Obamacare. But it comes more importantly from knowing how specifically to place limitations on an administration that has no interest in having those limitations placed on it in the first place. And the work that I've done, even going back to the days when I served as your United States Attorney under President Reagan, but particularly the experiences that I gained serving in the House previously, in which we accomplished these important things, I think is very important. And when you look down the road, for example, to the heart of the 11th District with Lockheed Dobbins, there is going to be a process, a base realignment and cloture commission process within the next couple of years for certain. And we know also to a high degree of certainty that Dobbins will be among those that will be very carefully scrutinized, as it was before in 1995. And we put together a team of seasoned veterans and some of us younger folks to forestall that, to save Dobbins. We're going to have to fight that battle again. And if we do that with a very, very young congressional delegation, missing, for example, some of the leaders we had the last go-round, that is Newt Gingrich and Jack Kingston on the House side, he will no longer be on the House side, Sam Nunn and so forth. And if we enter that battle with simply several freshmen, it will be much more difficult. So experience, despite the fact what some folks say, experience does matter. It does count. And it's important to have that experience working for us rather than against us on the other side of the aisle, and would ask for your support, your acknowledgement that that sort of experience, that track record of fighting for that conservative agenda, not just fighting those battles but winning many of them, not all of them, but many of them, is important and it is relevant at this particular point in our history. Fred, that concludes my remarks, and whatever time you would deem it appropriate for Q&A.
Take 3 or 4 minutes from now.
And are there any questions about the campaign or about me? One thing that yes ma'am.
Why did you leave the Republican Party to run for President of the United States?
It was primarily because both of the parties at that time were very clearly moving in the direction of bigger and bigger government. We had the TARP program that both McCain and Bush had supported, that Obama had supported. We had an administration at the time that was very clearly moving away from what, to me, have always been the core principles of the Republican Party, and that is individual liberty as opposed to the power of the state over the individual. And when those sorts of issues come up, I do not come down on the side of, oh, I'm going to support a party over the Constitution. I support the Constitution. And when the Constitution is being denigrated and not used to further individual liberty and to shrink the size, the scope, and the cost of and the power of the federal government, then I looked for an alternative during that campaign. I think nowadays, if you look at where the Republican Party is, thanks to a lot of work, for example, by Ron Paul, and I don't agree with Ron Paul on everything, but him and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, they're delivering and adhering to that same message, and it has indeed pulled the Republican Party back to its core principles of true individual freedom and smaller government. It had drifted quite far from those back in that period.
Other questions?
Hi, Cassie. Would you vote to make sure that all the members of Congress and the Senate and the administrative branch of government up there pay their own health care? What do you think about that?
Well, I think they ought to be subject to whatever the rest of the country is subject to. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of the most telling problems with Congress, that there were so many in the Congress, including Harry Reid himself, who wanted to exempt members of Congress from having to abide by the terms of Obamacare. No, Congress, and one of the important things that we incorporated as part of the contract with America that Newt and the other folks crafted as basically the platform on which we ran back in 1994 was to stop this business of having Congress have special rules that applied for itself. And as one of the first measures in the contract with America, we made Congress and members of Congress and their staff subject to a whole range of restrictions that applied to American businesses that the Congress in years past had exempted itself from.
Time for one more quick question and quick answer.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Oscar, you said you weren't going to ask questions.
Oh, this is a softball.
Oh.
I'll yield to the lady from Alpharetta.
Time's up. Go ahead.
What are you going to do to win over the young people? My children are both conservatives, and they're both considering themselves libertarians. At heart, I think they're Republicans, but they're disgusted with the Republican Party, frankly. And we've got to get that generation on board if we're going to do anything, is my view.
It's a serious problem. I serve also on the board of the NRA, the National Rifle Association. I have for a number of years, and that is the most serious challenge facing the NRA as well. How do we get young people on board who are either frustrated with the lay of the land out there or who have no familiarity or concept, in the case of the NRA, of firearms rights and usage and so forth. Here again, it goes back to what we were just talking about a minute ago. Ronald Reagan understood, and he said this publicly, that the heart of conservatism is libertarianism, and vice versa. There certainly are differences, when you look at the formal party structures, but that's not what we're talking about. And if we deliver not like Romney did, but deliver like Ronald Reagan would, a positive message of individual opportunity, and keep the message positive, we can reach a lot of those people. And that's why when you look, for example, at some of the polling that's been done already in anticipation of who might be the candidates in 2016, some of the candidates, such as Rand Paul, for example, are capturing a very, very significant percentage of young people. That's the message that we have to deliver. It can't be a message that's centered in Washington. And one of the things that I would like to see us do, and would plan to do as a member of Congress again, is have more hearings in the district. We have these hearings all the time in Washington, and the importance, the impact of it on the individuals and the small businesses often is lost. We need to bring the government back to the districts and to the communities and have men and women who can deliver a positive message, remembering it's important how you say something is what you're saying.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you all.
Thank you all for having me. Let me start off by introducing my wife, Elizabeth, back here, as well as my son, Zach. We are blessed with 3 boys. Our oldest, Harmon, graduates from West Point next month, and our twins, Zach and Charlie, go to Georgia. Given the fact that Harmon's graduating from West Point, the biggest event in my family next month will not be the primary on May 20th, but will be his graduation on May 28th. Zach and Charlie are trying to figure out a way to stay in Athens a little longer, and Harmon's trying to figure out how to get the heck out of West Point as quick as he can. I do appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to y'all. I do know many of y'all personally, and I have worked with many of y'all over the years. Elena, in particular, I thank y'all for opening up this facility. It's something that's very dear to my family, very dear to my campaign. Tom Krause, my campaign manager, is back here, and his wife, Rachel, is a graduate of the Shepherd program, and a daughter of a very close friend of ours right now is going through this program as well, and she's receiving excellent care from this facility, and we're very blessed to have this here in the Buckhead community. I have had the great honor to represent Buckhead and Sandy Springs in the Georgia House for the last decade. I have a proven record as a Georgia conservative who can get the job done. And I think that's what distinguishes me in this particular race, is that I have shown that conservatives and Republicans in particular can govern in difficult economic times. With all due respects to my friend Bob Barr, and he is my friend, the question that was asked a moment ago is a great divide between he and I. I believe very strongly for the last 12 years to stay in this party, to fight in this party, and to show that conservatives can govern even in the most difficult time. I have not been someone who has witnessed what strong leadership can do in a legislative body. I have been part of that leadership team. I started off as the vice chair of Judiciary, then rose to the chairing the Education Appropriations Committee at a time when, quite frankly, the economy was cratering the most, and that was a very difficult position to be in. And then I had the great honor to serve as the House Majority Whip in the Georgia House for the last three terms. As part of that team, I have worked on over 35 major pieces of legislation since first being elected, starting with the creation of the city of Sandy Springs. I was a co-sponsor of that bill and helped get that through in my first term in the Georgia House after 30 years of trying to do so. Then moved forward on such issues as diverse as Medicaid fraud, tackling that issue, taking a look at charter schools, the charter school bill that passed and the constitutional amendment that passed just last year, in 2012 rather. I co-sponsored that amendment, and I chaired the organization that led that fight at the ballot box. And we were the first state in the country to pass a constitutional amendment dealing with charter schools. And like I said, I was the chair of the organization that led that fight. I've taken on the issues of illegal immigration. I co-sponsored that particular bill that passed in 2011. I took on the very difficult task that many of us are just now waking up to understand how important it is in our state of human trafficking. A bill that, quite frankly, came to me from my constituents who told me how serious a problem it was and that I needed to take the point of the spear to go after that. And as a result of my efforts, quite frankly, in pulling together the coalition, an issue that we couldn't even get out of a subcommittee for 3 years, we passed out of the Georgia House and the Georgia Senate with only one dissenting vote. And we are now recognized as having one of the strongest laws in the country on that issue. I've had to take on the very difficult issue of the budget here in the state of Georgia. We're required to have a balanced budget here in the state of Georgia. And over the last 5 years, as part of the House leadership, we have had to cut over 15% of our state's budget. Some of those cuts were very deep and were very difficult to make. But as part of the House leadership, I was part of that team that actually made those difficult decisions. So I understand from firsthand knowledge how important a constitutional amendment is when it comes to balancing the budget. Because politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat, it's difficult to look a constituent in the eye and say, look, I know that you have a program here that you dearly love, but we just can't afford to keep it. We've had to make those difficult calls here in the state of Georgia. I'm convinced that we will not make those difficult calls in the long run on the federal level unless we get a balanced budget. And that's one reason why I've already started the work that I want to do in Washington this year. I was part of the team that led the fight this year to call for a convention of the states. If the federal government will not, and the Congress will not call for a balanced budget amendment, the states have a right under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution to do so. And I helped lead the fight this year to call for that convention of the states so that we can do so. The reason that we need to do so is we need a two-pronged attack on this issue. If Congress will not act, we need to show that the states will act. And it's desperately important that they do so. The first time Congress took up a balanced budget amendment, there was only a $1 trillion debt. We now have a debt over $17 trillion, and it is growing faster and faster every year. So we need to be taking that issue seriously. In addition to that issue, I've also taken on other conservative causes around the state, from dealing with open government issues to making sure that when it came to redistricting, that the Republicans were being treated fairly. I led the fight in the Georgia House in 2011 on that particular issue. I also took care, for those of you who live in Fulton County, I've actually had experience with fighting to shrink a county or fighting to shrink a government. I've been one of the leaders in the Georgia House fighting to bring the size and scope of Fulton County down to size, given the fact that we are a county that's overwhelmingly municipalized. I have done all these things, not because I'm the brightest boy in the room. I've done that because I'm very good at recognizing who is the brightest boy or the brightest gal in the room and listening to them. I have learned a long time ago that my job as a representative is not to take the wisdom, rather not to take edicts from the gold dome, but to take the wisdom of my community to the table where decisions are made. That is the reason for my success on the state level. That will be sort of the cornerstone of how I will operate as your next United States Congressman. I feel very strongly that our area is a very rich area, not so much in terms of finances, but in terms of wealth of knowledge. And if I simply take the wisdom of the folks that send me to Washington, I'll be able to get the job done in a very deliberative manner. I have done all these things, quite frankly, by trying to build common ground with folks, recognizing that my opponent today may be my closest ally tomorrow. I saw that very most clearly in the fight over the constitutional amendment, which required 2/3 of the House and the Senate. A lot of folks said, well, that should be easy given the numbers that you have in the Georgia House and Senate who are Republican. However, we had a lot of Republicans who simply couldn't vote for that bill because of the pressure back home. So we had to go to the Democrats, oftentimes very liberal Democrats, and get them to come on board. And we did so by virtue of the fact that I had not burned bridges in my past work in the Georgia House, but I'd rather establish relationships so that when the time came to call on them to build that relationship, to get those difficult things done, I was able to do that. I've worked real hard to be that kind of representative for you, and it's been my great honor to represent many of you in the Georgia House for the last decade. It will be even my greater honor to represent y'all in Congress. And with that, since I'm a great believer in the fact that I should listen more than talk, let me go to the questions. Yes?
I'll ask the softball, so I'm going to ask Bob Barr, and that is, at least from my standpoint, the Attorney General of the United States obviously supported by the President of the United States, is deciding, quote, which laws he's going to enforce. This is very troubling to me. And when you're in Congress, and I do think you will be there, what can you do, your lawyer, to help?
We need to make sure that the number one rule is the rule of law when it comes to the Attorney General. I still remember a long time ago, several years ago, in fact, I considered actually making a race for Attorney General. And I went in 2010. It just wasn't the right time given my boy's age. And I went to Mike Bowers, who's our former state Attorney General. And I sort of talked to him about the job. And Mike made a very interesting point that also applies to the U.S. Attorney General. He said, Edward, if you're looking to make policy, Attorney General's not the right place to go. If you're looking to implement policy, Attorney General's not the right place to go. If you're looking to enforce the laws of the state of Georgia as dictated elsewhere, then that's the role of the Attorney General. The role of the U.S. Attorney General is no different. And the idea that either he or this president can choose what laws to enforce and what laws to simply waive because it's not politically convenient to do so is contrary to a very core principle of the United States. And it's time for Congress to stand up and declare that that kind of conduct should no longer exist. Whether it actually leads to an article of impeachment or some other step that's being taken, I'll wait on getting there before I go down that road. But I do think it's extremely important and time for Congress in particular to stand up and make it very clear that the rule of law will be enforced, that the role of Congress to make the laws and to set the public policy, that will not be intruded upon by the executive. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of enforcing laws, immigration,
Mm-hmm.
I was really offended when I saw on TV this morning the behavior of the Speaker of the House yesterday. He was laughing and boo-hooing. What can you tell us about how you feel about these laws being enforced?
Well, keep in mind, as I said earlier, I've worked very closely on this issue. I was the co-sponsor, and I helped lead the fight as the majority whip to pass HB 87 in Georgia, which is one of the toughest illegal immigration bills in the country among all the states. Let me sort of go down what I believe are my core principles when it comes to taking a look at immigration issues. Number one, secure our borders. That should not be something that has to be bargained for when you start looking at other reforms that need to be made. That should be something that's passed without any other question. Secondly is no amnesty, period. If someone chooses to cross our borders illegally to come into the United States, that should not lead to a pathway to citizenship. It's contrary to the rule of law. It's unfair to those who are waiting patiently in line. My deputy campaign manager actually is an immigrant from the Ukraine. Her name is Vlada Galen, for those who have not met her. She and her mother came here when she was 9. The rest of her family's been waiting for 14 years to be able to come here legally. And the idea that other folks are jumping in line and will now have a pathway to citizenship is simply unfair to those who are waiting patiently. The third is that, quite frankly, amnesty will not work. It didn't work in 1986 when we only had 3 million folks here who were here illegally, and we granted an amnesty program. It won't work today. The third thing that needs to be recognized is that I understand as a legislator who has actually had to be in the room and do difficult things to pass difficult bills. There's a difference between a comprehensive bill that takes a look at one issue from multiple directions, for instance, the human trafficking bill, and an immigration bill that was passed by the U.S. Senate, which is a grab bag bill, which basically threw several very different issues into one bag. And that's what immigration issues are. The issue of securing the border is very different from the issue of dealing with the children of folks who come here illegally, which is very different from the folks dealing with folks who come here on student visas, get educated at our universities, want to stay, have the skills that we want them to keep here, but are forced underneath our present immigration policy to go home, versus the difference, and then the issue as often raised regarding a better pathway to come into the United States for those who could actually enhance our society. The bottom line on all these issues across the board, and this is something that's not talked about nearly enough, is what is in the best interest of the American people. That should be the guiding question that should be asked regarding each and every immigration issue that comes before us, is what is in the best interest of our American society. That's what should be dictating our immigration policies and trying to go through it. And there's several other issues as well, dealing with guest worker program and everything else. Those ought to be broken down into smaller pieces and dealt with one-on-one.
Okay, your time's up. Just
Yes,
one more quick question.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, you said you're not in favor of amnesty, but you are in favor of what's best for the American public. Given the fact that a major part of our economy is dependent upon migrant workers, how do you make that change without disrupting that whole economic part?
Well, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, one of our biggest problems right now is we have a migrant worker program that doesn't work. It worked, and I've actually been to South Georgia and worked on this issue extensively and talked to the farmers. The migrant worker program right now works for the large, enormous agribusinesses, but doesn't work for the smaller farmer trying to operate, because it's just too bureaucratic. And what we need to do is set up a guest worker program that works not only for the enormous agribusinesses, but also works for the smaller farms that want to do it legally if we come up with a system that will allow for that, but can't simply do so. And keep in mind, migrant work is skilled labor. I dare anyone to go down and try to pick cucumbers in July without any background or experience to do so for more than 3 days. It takes someone with a high level of skills, a particular level of skills, to be able to do that work. And the fact that they rotate from county to county, to state, depending on the crops at a particular year, does not change that fact. And the fact of the matter is we need to come up with a guest worker program when it comes to the issue of farm labor that will work for not only for the large agribusinesses, but for the small farmers. And I'm also very sensitive to that as the grandson of a farmer. Thank you all very much for having me.
Yeah, thank
you. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for this opportunity, and thanks for coming out late on this beautiful afternoon, because I can think of lots of things probably everyone in the room would rather be doing. But do appreciate this opportunity, appreciate what y'all are doing. We need more folks doing what you're doing. First, I have to say I'm not a lawyer. In fact, I had a lady ask me on the campaign trail, she says, how do you run for Congress when you're not a lawyer? And I said, well, I don't know, but I'm managing so far. And, but we've got the greatest justice system in the history of civilization. And but I'm a businessman. I bring that skill set to, and we'll bring that skill set to Washington. Let me tell you about our district. We're the 12th district of Georgia. The northernmost county is Columbia County. It's about half of Columbia County, and it is the growingest part of our region. It's the suburban sprawl of Augusta, Richmond County. I was born in Columbia County on a farm called the Georgia Hereford Farm. My mom and dad were educators and farmers, mostly educators, to pay for the farming habit back then. I worked my way through college in a steel fabricating plant. They're located in Columbia County, working double shifts as a welder. If you go down below Richmond County, which Columbia and Richmond are the two most populous counties, it's farming, rural areas. There are 18 counties. It goes down the Savannah River to Effingham County. It's about half of Effingham County. And then it goes over, it does not include Savannah, and then it goes down to Coffee County, which is 3 hours from my house. I can tell you that. And that's tooling pretty well. Then it goes over to Lawrence County, Dublin, and then comes back up. Does not include Jefferson County and that area. It's kind of a pear-shaped district, 18 counties. Of course, I think most of the districts are 700,000 people. Like I said, I was born and raised in Columbia County in 1982. I moved to Richmond County. That move was predicated on my wife. My wife and I had been members of the same church for 40 years. And she played the piano and directed the choirs at our church. And we lived in Columbia County, and it was a little bit of a commute, about 20 minutes. And she said, we need to move closer to church. So we bought one of those old houses. It's still the money pit. And we're right around the corner from our church. And we've been there since 1982. 37 years ago, my wife and I took our savings and we started a small construction company. And over those 37 years, we've grown that business. 7 years ago, I transitioned that business to the next generation. And not only realizing that my season of leadership, now through some of our YPO programs, had come to a conclusion, but frankly, I just didn't want to compete with that young crowd if they left. So I felt like I needed to give them all the opportunity that they deserved and transition that business. I'm still active and I'm still at risk, but they're doing a great job. I had no plans at that time to run for the United States Congress. In fact, I really wanted to get involved in our community. And I had been involved in many areas of our community. If you look at our resume, my resume, you'll see that I've been involved in a lot of things. Of course, we started a community bank, and that's been a lot of fun. And we did a lot of other things. You know, things that I'm proud of, the Heritage School and Christ Community Health Services. So those are projects. When we did those projects, I said, you know, we know how to solve our problems in our communities, but we just can't seem to solve them as fast as Washington is creating them. And I'll tell you, I've been involved in Washington for a long time, going back to our great Congressman Charlie Norwood. I think probably many of you have had the chance to meet Charlie. Charlie unfortunately passed away in 2006. And then my dear friend Saxby Chambliss, who I met when he was running for the Senate. And I was Saxby's East Georgia chairman. Also, as the president of my industry association, the Associated General Contractors of Georgia, of the Georgia branch, I spent quite a lot of time in Washington. Obviously, we're a very regulated industry, and there was lots that we had to deal with. In fact, we had 2 presidential briefings. Thank goodness it was with George Bush at that time, and those were well done. President Bush was keen on the issues. He was a delightful guy to talk to about the issues. Certainly I was disappointed in some of the things that happened as far as the economy. And frankly, that's why I'm running for the United States Congress. Right now, we are in uncharted waters as far as this economy. We've invested mightily in it, $4 trillion, and there are still lots of people, 92 million people, I think, sitting at home. Plus the fact that we inherited the great American dream from our parents and grandparents. What are we going to hand off to our children and grandchildren? I'm very concerned about that. I've had the opportunity to work in many organizations, not only the business, but banks, the Associated General Contractors, and many, many others across the community. And all I can tell you is whenever I've been involved, I've managed to leave it a little better than I found it. And that's what I want to try to do in Washington. You know, the problem in Washington is leadership. And we must have new leadership in Washington. I offer that type of leadership. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. And, the politicians, and I've created jobs, I've balanced budgets. And the politicians in Washington can't seem to do either. So that's why I want to be your next congressman in the 12th District of Georgia. That concludes my remarks, Fred, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions?
Oh my goodness.
Well, one over here.
Yeah.
You said that you balance budgets. How would you get started from there to balance the budget?
In business, what we do, I've been through 5 recessions. The most difficult for us was in 1992. We had a major client go bankrupt and cost us, or they owed us $1 million. Those were some sleepless nights. That was our most difficult. But the great thing about recessions is you really don't know what you're going to be in for. It's kind of like Ed talked about the state budget. I mean, sometimes you just got to look people in the face and say, hey, we got to cut this program. In business, what we do, and I don't understand why they've never done this in Washington, but we do what we call a 7-year look back. And we look at every expense item in our budget. And I know Washington, I mean, it's enormous and it's $4 trillion. But listen, you can still examine every line item in your budget. What would be interesting is to go back 10 years. 10 years ago, we spent $2.3 trillion. That's a lot of money. We took in $2.8 trillion this year. I mean, revenue is not too bad, but we want to spend $4 trillion. Now, how did we get from $2.3 trillion to $4 trillion? Is what I want to know about. I mean, I can tell you this, and we talked about the welfare reforms Bob talked about in '94 that they made. All those reforms were reversed in the stimulus package of 2000, the failed stimulus package of 2009, which has now put 48 million people on food stamps. And like I said, we got 92 million people sitting at home. But what you do is you go in there in that budget and you can say, okay, we're spending this much money now, and we spent this much money 10 years ago. Why do we need to spend a greater amount of money than we spent 10 years ago? And if there's no reason for it, you just zero it back. And it's amazing what you can do to the expense side once you finish that exercise. Now, you always have to go back in and maybe add a few things back. But, you know, the federal government operates like this. We spend more money in Washington the month of September than we do in all the other months combined. Because they say, if you don't spend that money, you're not going to get it next year. We don't do that in business. In fact, we give our folks an incentive to save money. And we're missing, like I said, there are no business skills in Washington. And what I like to do, I like to get in and drill down and see exactly what's going on. And those folks are going to get tired of me. I think those agencies up there, and that's the other thing, there's no congressional oversight over there. I mean, we got the purse strings, but, you know, why does the IRS need 100,000 agents? You know, I'd like to say, let's cut the IRS in half and go in the honor system. You know, we might increase revenues if we did that. People say, you know, the honor system, hey, I was a Boy Scout, I'll do that. And we'll save half the cost of the IRS, and I'm out of time. Anyway, great. Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Eugene Yu. Good afternoon. First of all, let me introduce my wife, my 34-year better half, Johnny Yu. Speaking about my wife, when I first thinking about the politics, she thought I was out of mind. She think I was crazy. See, well, first thing her response was, take the Tylenol and go to bed. You can't see. It took me almost 1 month to try to convince her why I'm running for this, why I'm interesting all of a sudden. My name is Eugene Yu, and I'm very humble and honored to be here with you this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe in America. As an immigrant American, I lived it. I started working at the local factory when I was a 10th grade in high school, at the assembly line, at the midnight shift. In the weekend, I was working as a local grocery store, as well as a volunteer fireman. I did that the entire my high school year. And after graduating from the high school, I became a full-time firefighter, then still going to college. And later, I was enlisted in the U.S. Army. Served 3 years as a military policeman. And I look back, those pictures, I was a little shocked. After after honorably discharged, I became the deputy sheriff in Richmond County, Georgia, for 5 years. Then later, as we all know, there's a land of opportunity. Opportunity came, I became small business owner, refurbishing the military vehicle for the last 20 years, dealing with the U.S. government, 100% exporting to overseas, supervised by the U.S. government. We live in a great nation, a nation that I believe in. This nation has been so good to me and my family. Just like earlier, I was telling one lady, when I first came to this country when I was a teenager, you can imagine, didn't know how to speak English. Even today, I still have a little struggle with. I was complaining to my parents, why we are here. After 40-some years, here I am, I'm running for U.S. Congress. My both parents passed away. And every day I'm thinking about, when I'm traveling down to the campaigning, I'm thanking for my parents. They make the right choice. Some of them, you already know, first, I was running for U.S. Senate. 8 months later, I changed it, running for 12th district. First thing, culture shock. Because the Senate race, I was driving around Atlanta. See all these high-rise buildings, just dealing with the traffic. Being as a former police officer, I mean, I can deal with all this traffic. And all of a sudden, when I changed to 12th district, I see nothing but cow and goat and the horse. I said, oh my God, all around the countries. However, the reason I'm running for this Congress, because I believe in Washington, they are completely lost common sense. They are out of control. The system is broken. I believe they need a new blood, new idea, new solution. As we are Republican, I always hear that we as a Republican, we need to change our image, reach out to others. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we don't need pandering the other community or other side. We as a Republican, we must tell them, we must promote what is Republican value is. It's time to Washington need some good Georgian value. I lived it. I know what American value is. I believe in America. We owe it to our children, dear children to preserve this great nation. The reason I'm running for this position all of a sudden, because I want my children, dear children, your children, their children, have the same American dream that I have when I came to this country 40-some years ago. I still believe America is still a shining city on the hill. I've been saying all along, 25 years ago, we had a President Ronald Reagan. Today, we have President Barack Obama. And our district, for the last 10 years, the Democrat, John Barrow, he always talked conservative, but yet he always voted liberal. Today, back then, we had a Johnny Cash and Bob Hope. You remember him? But today, we don't have enough cash and no hope. But as we Americans, we always overcome that obstacle. That's why I've been saying I believe in America. Look at me. Republicans need me. You cannot send the same people over and over looking for different results. We as a Republican, must educating them, promote what is real Republican value is. I believe I can reach out everybody, not only Republican, I can reach out the Democrat. I can reach out anybody. One day I was walking on my neighborhood. I don't know, you guys maybe been in Augusta, Georgia, but there's called Harrisburg. It's an old town. I was knocking on the door. That house is so clumsy. When I didn't hit it hard, I just hit it and the door was wide open. I looked at inside, there's a bunch of kids inside. I started counting, there's about 6 of them. And finally one lady walking out the door, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, and my name is Eugene Yu and I'm running for what? Congress." "Well, let's talk." So we started talking. Make a long story short, started calculating, this lady making more than $100,000 a year without no tax. Because of all those kids. She's 37 years old. She never worked in an entire her life. No wonder this country is a $17 trillion debt. And those kids, what they're going to learn? They're going to learn the same thing what their mother did. So that numbers keep growing. So we as a politician, whether we're a politician or we are the community leader, we must reach out to these people, give a proper message, give an opportunity to educate these people. Try to, not to get on the wagon, try to help them to get off to the wagon. I say, look at me. The person I came to this country with a $29 in my pocket, didn't know how to even speak English. But if I can't do it, why can't you do it? When I'm really talking to those people, they really listen to it. You're the Republican candidate, you never really visiting my house. Yeah, I worry about my kids. Anyway, I think that my time is almost gone, so
Take a few questions.
So thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. I will do my best. Common sense. I may not know everything, but I will do my best. Common sense. Deliver your voice. Not my voice, deliver your voice. I will fight for whatever best interest for the Georgia, my district, and my country. Thank you very much. I'm ready.
What's the first thing you're going to do when you get
First, I will not focus on how many bill or try to pass or how many bill I'm going to co-sponsoring, because I think we got too many bill already. I don't have no problem with a lawyer. I think that's great profession. But there are so many bill already implemented in Washington. Some of them, lawyers, they can't even figure that out. That's the kind of problem we face. Why can't we just go back to common sense, just basic? My first thing, your answer today, most important thing we have, economy and job. Young people are looking for job. When they graduate from the college, university, they're looking for job. Several months ago, I was in Dalton, Georgia. This nice couple walked up to me. They are engaged in 2 years. Man still looking for job. The girl was working the car wash, and she was saying, I graduated from the UGA. My parents didn't expect me to work in the part-time and the car wash. I said, oh my God, we are in trouble. This is the United States of America. We are most of the strongest country in the world. Now here we are. We see in the street, this young kid can't even find a job. therefore they can't even get married. I want to help those people. Try to bring those jobs we lost so many years ago. Just like we already exercised that the Kia and the Hyundai factory came to the West Georgia, how much the area has been booming. I want to see that all over my district, everywhere in Georgia, or everywhere in our nation. We lost too many jobs, manufacturing jobs, blue collar and high-tech business. We need to bring back. I think I can do that with my 20-year international business. I know how to bring it. I know how to go into the right person to make that happen. Any other?
When you do such a good job, you don't have to get too many questions.
Thank you so much. And God bless y'all.
Let me say something to the four candidates. I think all of us, you've expressed your appreciation to us for being here and wanting to hear from you so we can make decisions regarding support. But I think obviously it's always pleasant to see when you have multiple candidates, each one of whom has distinguished himself today. You bring honor not only to the party that you represent, but to America. You are four great Americans. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your being here, and we wish each one of you good luck, best wishes in this campaign. Now, having said that, as nicely as I could, I'm going to now ask you to leave so we can get about business. And the rest of the guests, if you will walk out the same door to the right where the exit signs are, I'm going to ask all of the